Okay, hello. Super happy to be here. It's my second time in Umeå. First time was in December, so it's a pretty different landscape then. I'm a designer, and I've been working with design for 25 years, and the last 10 years with inclusive design. So in our studio, Ralston and Bo, we're very interested in subjects that makes our society more just and move it forward. And we translate those subjects into scenarios, spaces, and objects. So today, I'm not going to talk about 3D printed wood houses at all, but I would like to talk about the societies that these tools can be used to construct and different big picture subjects that can be inspiring and maybe give some pointers to why we would 3D print wooden houses, perhaps. So let's see if this works. Yeah. So when I was asked to come here, the first thing I thought about was this. Houses duplicated, the same ones, very nice ones. A little bit like the concrete houses we just saw from China, where 10 are printed per day. So I took this picture, I filmed this on my bike in Amsterdam in the beginning of this year. So yeah, is this what the 3D printing in wooden houses should be about? I was wondering. I would like to start to talk about a project I did just a couple of weeks ago in Marseille. This is a very traditional Haussmannian boulevard in the city center of Marseille. Marseille is a very diverse city. Poor and rich live side by side. And like Haussmann did, he kind of just plowed through the city center and he just constructed this road. Then life took over and you had diverse shops, all kinds of people living in these flats. And then the second part of the story is that an investor banker came in and they just threw everyone out and renovated it to find its former glory. But today someone else has bought this area and they would like the life to come back, and they don't know how, because now many of these shops and apartments are empty. Yeah, so what I would talk about this, because when I went to the beginning of the street, so is there anyone from Foster and Partners here today? I saw, yeah. So in the beginning of the street, you have the old port, and Foster and Partners, you constructed this roof here, and it's added a kind of a layer to the history of this town, like a modern kind of roof. And actually, why there are so many people this night is that the Olympique of Marseille was playing in the football finals. And it was the natural meeting point, meeting space for the supporters, which is everybody in Marseille. So I'm very inspired by Jane Jacobs. She was an activist and a pioneer in urbanism in New York. She was working to prevent the city of New York to kind of erase, I think it was Harlem at that time. And what she said is like a city, it's a chaos. The city is several layers of history, stories that live in a dynamic kind of ecosystem, so to speak. And this is what we see in the Rue de la République, for instance, that they just took away the whole ecosystem. And it doesn't work. Another project where this happened was in Saint-Nazaire. Saint-Nazaire was totally destroyed during the war, totally bombed. And so what they did is that they reconstructed the center away from the sea in a very octagonal way in a 50s style. So all the architecture looked the same. And the city, we were working on replanted identity, meaning how can we create a new identity with the people that live there from before and those who come in and move there. Everyone told us, but what you really need to focus on is the city center, because nobody likes it. Everyone goes there to work, but they quickly go away. And we realized that if you look at the center, which is here, I mean, all of this is Saint-Nazaire, but in the center, there's no neighborhoods. The names of the neighborhoods were not transmuted into the new town. And at the same time, you couldn't see the sea anymore from the city center. So our job is to take what's invisible and make it visible. So we actually were inspired by the people that worked there, the metal industry, this 50s architecture, and we wanted to lift it up into an object that people could use, invite people to stay, sit down and take their time in the city center. So this was our contribution. But when we work in ID Lab, we invite many other creators as well. And here we did an exhibition that toured in France and Norway. And I would like to invite you just for a few minutes. We have like 30 minutes of videos from when we exhibited in Saint-Nazaire with the inhabitants that came in to look at the exhibition. And we asked them what was their connection to the city and what was special about Saint-Nazaire. And I'm very inspired by people, so I think they could talk. Yeah, I would like you to listen just for a few minutes of what they say. If we have sound, do we have?
Ce qui me lie à Saint-Nazaire, c'est d'abord que j'y suis né et que j'y suis resté, et même pendant les bombardements. Donc c'est quelque chose de fort quand même. Et après, quand Saint-Nazaire s'est reconstruit, c'est là qu'on a vu que Saint-Nazaire a évolué, se reconstruisait. C'était très intéressant et très bien. Et puis depuis, je suis resté. Marié à Saint-Nazaire, des enfants à Saint-Nazaire, qui maintenant sont partis dans toute la France. Et ma femme décédée, je suis resté tout seul, mais je suis toujours à Saint-Nazaire.
Ce qui me lie à Saint-Nazaire, c'est tout, parce que j'y suis né, j'y ai fait mes études, j'ai ma famille, mes amis, mes souvenirs. Donc je m'y sens. Je suis chez moi.
Moi, je ne suis pas originaire de Saint-Nazaire. Mais moi, ce qui me lie, c'est la mer. Parce qu'on est toujours sur l'eau avec mon ami, on a un bateau et on est toujours sur l'eau. Donc, c'était ça. Et c'est le port. J'aime bien aussi les bateaux de commerce. Justement, ça me rappelle que voilà, le monde est grand et que c'est important, ça. Ça, c'est ce qui me lie à Saint-Nazaire.
Moi, j'y suis né. Et ce qui me fait en premier, c'est Ville ouvrière. Ville ouvrière, les chantiers.
Mais c'est quoi qui vous lie, vous, à Saint-Nazaire?
Comment ça, l'intimité que j'ai avec Saint-Nazaire? Moi, c'est la mer, déjà. Ouais, l'extérieur, la mer. Et, ouais.
Moi, je suis pas nazérienne, je suis ancienne. Ça fait 4 ans que j'habite ici. Et ce qui m'a fait venir ici, c'est mon frère, à la base.
The situationists, they said that there's as many cities as there are people, and people are fascinating. So for me, it's a very huge source of inspiration. And I think that if we can activate layers of history, usage, and people, so also this about not creating these dormant, like sleeping cities, but mixed usage, I think that's part of the future of creating our cities. So I want to share like our process. How do we work? We work with big picture ideas, a little bit of what I'll be talking to you about today. And it creates a kind of a why. Why do we do this? Why shall we 3D print wooden houses? It also tells us a little bit about who we should include in our investigation. So we go out in the real life and we talk to people. This is a kind of, it is design thinking process in praxis. And we define different themes that we take forward in a point of view. This inspires new scenarios where people's lives, our solutions, services, business models that you talked about, all hang together in a coherent story. It creates our context for whatever testing we're going to do, and then again, go out in real life to do very simple testing and go quickly and iterate to then create our final solutions. Another project we did in Oslo was working also on this identity, and in a kind of defavorized part of Oslo called Tøyen, that's in full transformation. Here we worked with Gabrielle Ferry from UVA, University of Amsterdam, with a gaming tool where we visualize layers of stories through photography. Goes really quick. Our proposition for that was to make the outside spaces, and we also have a shiny roof there, like the Foster project. But we realized that people were a lot outside, but like here, the temperatures or whatever, the weather, rain and snow, etc., it's kind of harsh, and not a lot of sun in the winter time. So we created roofs to activate spaces where you could have just put a table, and right of a sudden it would be a marketplace. So context for human connections, I think that's super important. We talk a lot about the space between the houses, and it's basically that. Sometimes you need just to do a little thing to make it work. Another thing I think is important and kind of builds on Jane Jacobs' theories. It's about organic city planning. So here is Joy Ito, from the director of MIT Media Lab, who says that we should take a step back and empower and enable nature and people, rather than trying to control it. If we can do that, that would be lovely. It's not easy when city planning is being done 20 years before you actually built something. And he's saying that in living labs, we can test things rather than trying to plan everything ahead and deploy a whole master plan. This also joined the point of view of the director of the New Town Institute, Michelle Provost, that we met in Rotterdam. And she says basically the master plan doesn't work. You have to find a way to develop cities organically. So we tried to hack the master plan in Amsterdam in March this year. So we did a little test. Here we are in NDSM. Anyone knows this area? Yeah, of course. So it's the cool area, right, of Amsterdam. It's north. It's the north part. You take a ferry boat over, and it was originally it was a wharf, and then artists came in and just squatted these empty buildings. Here behind is a very interesting project. It's container living, and you have students and young migrants that live side by side. It works actually. The social connection is working. This area, they're building like hell. They're building 200,000 habitations for the years to come. for the it's an enormous influx of habitants in Amsterdam at the moment. And here we see the area from the quay where the ferry comes in and up to some student homes and some office buildings. It's kind of a, how do you say, like a left area, kind of a la brousse in French. I get other languages in my head. But anyway, the grass takes over, it's wilderness is taking over. A very rich bird life here, actually. But people just bike through, and it's quite dirty. You have plastics. People don't really care about this area because it's going to stay like this for 2 years at least. They put big piles of sand that you see here in the middle to kind of crush down the ground before they drive down poles, and they start at 7 o'clock in the morning. So at the moment, they start with just building houses for students because they kind of can stand this noise, it seems like. So I lived in this building here. This is the plan for this area. So as you can see, everything that's beige, it's a building. So to give you an idea, it's 4 trees. So that's how much greenery it's going to be when it's finished. So we were wondering, can we hack this plan? And we started to imagine what this area could be. And we invited people to participate, to pick plastic, clean it up. And yeah, we did pretty many bags of dirt. And we proposed some different usages of the area. And then we did it. We just said, we sent emails to everybody, the mayor's office, the developer, and said, we're going to do this. We didn't get any reply. And we went really fast because we started to work on the Monday, and on the Thursday, everything was done. And we didn't know what we were going to do on the Friday before. So we made a sign and said that this is the Wilde Werf Park. We posted it on Facebook and just made it official. We made a mountaintop here on the sand pile because, yeah, Amsterdam is very flat, so even a pile can be like a little mountain. Here you see it again. We made a campfire with bricks that were just there at that place. We also circled the areas where you had the crossing between nature and the heritage of the wharf industry. Yeah, so I think another good idea is to see how can we do organic and inclusive planning in our cities. Yeah, and I think another subject where the 3D printing could be really interesting is auto construction and the flexibility that it possibly could bring. What's true is that a very large part of our architectural park, it's already there. So we need to find ways to build on that with new tools or new way to construct and make it better. Here it's a very new project that just won the Global Award for Sustainable Architecture this year from Lacation and Vassal. It's outside, it's on the Paris, it's a little bit on the outside of Paris. It's inside, but on the border, let's say. This building, actually, I went by many times because I lived in this area, so I know it. So I saw the project, it was really funny. What they did, you don't see that much. Might look quite, I mean, it's not an expressive architecture in any way, but what I really love is that they used this building, upgraded it with outside areas for everyone, and they extended the flats, and which reduced the energy usage with 60%. So, and these architects, are very keen on doing these types of projects, and they say if you destroy a home, you destroy lives. Choose to transform cities through reconstruction rather than destruction. And it's here we talk again about layers, right? This is from Container Architecture Festival in Taiwan. It's just like, could the 3D printed parts be like extensions, protheses that you put on other buildings? Could be interesting. Transformative extensions. So at the moment we have a project in the Contemporary Art Center of Grenoble, Le Magasin des Horizons. And we are trying to connect with the university over there, which is also a very large university town. One in every 5 adults in that city are a researcher. And we met with Bako, who is in charge of Cratère. She's working with earth architecture. One of her more recent projects, like all over the world, but what I found really interesting is that now she got a project with a development of the Greater Paris, which is giving a lot of waste, like in the wood industry. You have waste in developing the city. You have earth and stone and everything, and her job is to transform this into something you can construct houses with. The first thing she said, because yeah, we talked about every different type of technology we could and what we could do together, and she said, I'm not for 3D printing houses, because when she goes out and build earth architecture, it's to create a community. People learn new skills and they get an ownership to the building. So when I see the movie about the 3D printed earth architecture out in the exhibition, I get a feeling that it's also about transmitting skills. It's also about building something together. So perhaps this can work as well. But I think it's important to remember. So self-building, it's a trend. Actually, in this northern part of Amsterdam, there's a whole neighborhood where the municipality said, we're not going to sell this to a developer. We're just going to cut it, this part of the land in different pieces, and everyone can do whatever they like. And it's wonderful because every house has its own character. And there's even a wood log house in there. We met this guy, Claudius Schulze. He's traveling Europe in his self-built wooden boat. And it works. It has what he needs to live in it. Alejandro Aravena is very inspiring, former curator of the Venice Architecture Biennale. And he is a master of social architecture and inclusive architecture. He makes half-built houses, and then he lets people finish them by themselves. Something that was very natural in the favelas in Chile. People would do their own houses, but they were unsafe. So his invention is to make a safe platform and give space to people. Could we do that in the future in the way we build? So a permeable architecture with space for new habitats and uses. I'm also very, subjects that I think is very important is like, how can we absorb new movements of populations? The migration streams we've been seeing, it might be just the beginning. So we need to understand and see how we can make neighborhoods that have space for these new habitants instead of duplicating the förstad eller förort eller banlieue suburbs with just one type of habitants. Create layers, also social layers. Yeah, and then I've talked to Nigel here, and I learned that the complexity was not a problem for the 3D printer. He would read something very simple and something very complex in the same way. So imagine what kind of possibilities that gives. A church in wood that was all made by hand, it probably took many, many years to create it, but it still stands there. It has this variation and the beauty of the imperfect. Can we integrate and inject imperfection in the 3D printed wooden houses? And then you have, by Gaudi, the Sagrada Familia. It was still under construction when I visited it, and it probably still is. And it started in 1882. But what an amazing piece of art. Could this be something that we could do in 3D printing in a much easier way? Could we make 10 like this per day? I don't know. And then you have in wood the more biomimicry type of architecture from Sadid Memorial and Cultural Center in Phnom Penh. I think that's also very inspiring for this type of tool. So, but the track of the tool is also something we need to be really careful with. Somebody told me that I'm seeing now in the US, it's Joe Mellin living in San Francisco. I see AutoCAD houses being built, you know, like the tool, the software is creating the art, creating the design. So we have to be careful with that. If we are doing biomimicry houses everywhere, I mean, where is the invention in the end? So just a few ideas up here, that summarize what I've been talking about. Yeah, thank you.